Hey, hey, hey. Time for another Out of This World story from rSpace. Everyone loves a good train wreck. Today on rSpace, where do we even begin? Oh yes, with a tale as old as time. Love, betrayal, and a sprinkle of workplace shenanigans. To whoever may come across this in the future, thank you for taking the time to read or respond. I'm not entirely sure what led me here. I stumbled upon some of these stories on YouTube and thought this might be a good outlet for me to release some of my bottled up frustrations. Please forgive me if I start to jump around or ramble. I'll do my best to stay focused. My intention is to paint an unbiased and truthful picture. Let me begin by stating that every girl I've encountered in my life has hurt me, and I totally mean that. From my own mother to my cheating girlfriend and everyone in between. I first met my girlfriend, Lori, 6 years ago while working at a restaurant in the Portland area. She was a hostess and I was a server. Coming from Connecticut, she had just moved to the area. We were both part of the same friend group, since everyone in the group worked at the restaurant, so naturally we started off as friends. Now, let me pause here to be honest about myself. While I'm not perfect by any means, I've made some mistakes in my life, and I'll be the first to admit that I even made mistakes in this relationship. However, I still like to think of myself as a good guy. Anyways, going back to the story. During the time when we were just friends and colleagues, my mother was fighting ovarian cancer. Sadly, she passed away. I have to admit that even before her passing, dealing with her illness had been difficult for me, even though we didn't really have the best relationship. Despite putting on a happy face, I was struggling, and sex became my way of coping. As an attractive man, it was never hard for me to find a partner. It was just a way to get out of my head and really just get into a moment with someone else and forget about life for a while. But that's a story for another time. After my mother's death, I felt like I was losing myself mentally, and I wanted to desperately end my life. My mom had left my abusive father and I when I was around 4 years old, so I was raised by him and my stepmother once he remarried soon after. Although my mom tried to come back into my life once I was a teen, and we never really repaired what had happened between us, losing her broke something inside of me. I felt like I never really had that chance to talk about things that bugged me and really forgive and get that closure that I needed. I share this to provide a context for my state of mind at the time. In the midst of my grief over my mother's death, I tried to numb the pain by using women. I guess maybe I was searching for that void that she had left behind. That's how I met the woman who would become the mother of my children, not the cheating girlfriend, just to clarify. We became engaged, but our relationship eventually ended due to lies I had told her about myself. No, I wasn't cheating on her. However, in my desperate attempt to win her over, I had painted a false picture of myself that ultimately led to our downfall. Let's just say I had this sex addiction and I wasn't totally upfront about it. Anyways, after the engagement ended, I hit a rough patch. It wasn't just my struggles with depression, but also my constantly changing living situation and a friend from work who turned out to be deceitful. I was forced to bounce around from one rented room to another, never finding stability. And it wasn't because I couldn't afford the rent, but because of drama with the people I was renting from. The final straw was when the fake friend pulled a knife on me over a bill. This same person is actually the same one who tried to set me up with my cheating girlfriend, Lori. At first, I resisted for many reasons. I was still trying to make things work with my child's mother, and I wasn't really attracted to her at first. It might seem shallow, but she just wasn't really my type. But as a friend, Lori was one of my best friends at the time. She had always been there for me. She actually helped me through the pain of losing my mom. And after my fake friend and ex-roommate pulled the knife on me over some stupid bill, she let me move in with her. I was going to be sleeping in my car otherwise, and she said she couldn't stand for that. Despite my efforts, I couldn't repair the relationship with my children's mother over the course of a few years. One is biologically mine and the other isn't, but I stepped up to take care of her eldest child as my own. While I'm not perfect, I know that I am a good person for doing so. However, things took a turn when I allowed myself to start sleeping with Lori, who had feelings for me that I didn't reciprocate at first. At the time, I just needed that intimacy, I guess. And I liked the fact that she was into me, I'll be honest. Despite telling her from the beginning that dating would ruin our friendship, we eventually ended up together. And my ex-fiancé found out and wasn't happy about it either because I was technically pursuing her also, or at least knowingly trying to work on things. Looking back, I wonder if it was because I had given up on finding happiness in life and settled for what was presented to me. I should have tried harder with the mother of my children, but a part of me knows that she was too good for me anyways and didn't deserve what I put her through. In hindsight, I regret ever sleeping with Lori, but I can't change the past and must admit that I was struggling with my own personal demons at the time. Before I delve too deeply into the story, I want to provide some context about when everything started to fall apart. It was before we even officially became a couple, back when Lori and I were just friends and I was staying at her place following the knife incident with my fake friend. She was quietly seeing a married coworker from her second job while I was attempting to mend things with my child's mother. Eventually, sex got involved between me and Lori, and I entertained the idea of being with her. I kept asking if she was serious about being with me because she'd say things like, "I'm only staying in Portland to see where things are going between you and I." Then she'd have to stop seeing the other guy. Let's call him Joe Schmo. Now, she eventually got pregnant. She said it was by Joe Schmo, but I have a suspicion it might have been mine. Anyways, she got an abortion. On the day she had the abortion, Joe Schmo and her female friend came back to our apartment. Her friend ended up coming into our room and cuddling with me as my girlfriend, who was cheating on me, but we weren't really official yet. Cried and sobbed on Joe's shoulder in the living room. This made me angry because I had already expressed how I felt about him, even though, 1, we weren't serious, and 2, I had been trying to work on things with my children's mother. Well, it had pissed me off, and I ended up driving her friend home, and we ended up hooking up for 2 to 3 hours before I left to go smoke weed and get a bit wobbly with my best friend at his house. Many months later, Lori and I had moved into a new basement suite together. She had issues with her old roommate, and the cost of living in Portland made it difficult to find a new place. One night after finishing an uneventful shift at the restaurant, I came back to the basement suite, but I realized I didn't have a key, so I knocked on the door. I could hear noises coming from the inside, but there was no response. Well, I had been pounding on the door for at least 20 minutes before she came to the door in my band tee and a little pair of black panties. Well, to my surprise, but not really, that married guy I told her I didn't want around was in our suite. He must have rushed to put his clothes back on, but his face was flushed and he looked all sweaty like they had just been going hard at it. Apparently they didn't hear me at the door because she was playing him one of the vinyl records she just bought. Yeah, BS. There wasn't a lick of music playing in the suite when I was knocking on the door. Just the sweet, sweet music of her cheating heart. This was the final straw. How could I ever trust this woman again? I told her I knew exactly what they were doing, and I heard it all from outside after busting my balls at the restaurant all day. Yeah, that last part was a lie, but I wanted to make her feel even worse than she did. He tried to tell me that nothing happened, and then I said, "My girlfriend is standing in front of me with nothing but a t-shirt and panties, and she's been alone with you in there for however long, and apparently you've already knocked her up once. I'm having a hard time believing that nothing happened in there between the two of you. Get lost." And he scurried out of there. I know what you're thinking. Well, you weren't really into her anyways at the start. Love is strange. It honestly snuck up on me with her. I had looked at her as only a friend, and maybe a friend that I could get my rocks off with every now and again. But she ended up taking space in my heart that felt warm, and maybe what I had been missing all my life. I sort of felt my shell softening, you know? Like maybe she was healing a part of me that needed some healing. But anyways, she constantly tried to convince me that things were truly over between her and him after I caught them together, but I couldn't bring myself to believe her. Every time I brought up the idea of ending their friendship, she would push back and say, "You can't control who I'm friends with." This was a major red flag for me. In my opinion, men and women cannot simply be friends if they have a history of being intimate. There will always be an underlying desire between men and women. Despite this, I stayed, and as time continued to pass, I found myself switching jobs frequently. With 2 young children to still take care of from my previous relationship, I needed a more stable career, and I wasn't making the money that I wanted to at the restaurant. Not only that, but there was so much drama there within the restaurant friend group after a while, I just wanted to get far away from it. My ex-fiancée was getting married to someone else by this point, but Lori ended up helping me secure a job at the same company she worked for. Yes, I tried to work it out with her, because I felt like I'd let my ex-fiancée down by not trying hard enough with her. So something in me just didn't want to give up. Or maybe it was just my ego. Anyways, she helped me get this job at this prestigious private school, where Joe Schmo also happened to work. But luckily, we were on separate departments at first, so it didn't bother me too much. As long as he stayed away from me and Lori, I'd be fine with it. The money was too good to pass up. I thought things were getting better. Towards the end of my first year at the new job, they transferred me to a different building, and lo and behold, my immediate supervisor is none other than Joe Schmo. Great! From the very beginning, he offered me a position that had me working 6 hours a day instead of 8, but was making the same amount of money. Knowing I had to take care of my kids and wanting to see them more, I accepted without realizing his ulterior motives. By giving me more hours, he wouldn't have to work them himself. At the time, I didn't see this as a warning sign because he hadn't caused any issues after I told him to scram. I also will say that I didn't want to leave Lori because I felt like she was something stable for me, and I really didn't want to be homeless again for my kids. I had done that before and wasn't going back to that. I needed to be a better person for my children, and I felt like Lori was helping me be a better person. Eventually, I thought things were getting better. Lori had been all over me and so loving and hadn't mentioned Joe Schmo or anything like that. I'll even admit I did check her phone on a couple of occasions thinking I'd find something, but it was absolutely clean. But oh, how I was wrong. One day my neighbor asked me if I had another roommate. I didn't. He explained another guy has been coming by, and I immediately, from the description given, knew it was Joe Schmo. I thank my neighbor and tell him to let me know if he sees anything else suspicious, but to keep it on the DL. I didn't say anything, and I tried to act as normal as possible around her and Joe, my boss. I needed to get my crap together before I made a move. 1, because I was making good money and needed the money for my kids, and 2, I wanted to make sure I had a place to stay so that I could watch my children and have them over and not end up homeless again. This had been a huge fear of mine since my fake friend incident. I just had to make sure I was being the responsible adult my children deserved. I couldn't be rash here. I started watching Lori more closely and started noticing little changes that I didn't see as red flags right away. She started taking calls in a different room. She kept her phone real close to her and took it to the bathroom with her. A couple nights later, Lori tells me she's going out for drinks with a few of her girlfriends. I try my best to put on a smile on my face and tell her to have a good time, even though I have my suspicions that she's going to meet up with Schmo. Later that evening, I take my dog for a walk and spotted a familiar SUV parked a little ways down the street from our place. The same SUV that Joe Schmo parks in the parking lot at work. As I got closer, about 15 to 20 feet away from the vehicle's shining headlights, I noticed some figures moving around in there. Despite the darkness and my poor eyesight, it looks like they are kissing inside. I cross the street once more, taking my time to get a closer look. It's clear that they have noticed me and can sense my anger. Once I get back home, I immediately reach for my phone and blow up her phone. Surprisingly, she answers with annoyance, accusing me of overreacting. She tells me her friend was just dropping her off. She's gaslighting me, trying to make me doubt my own perception of things. Although I couldn't be certain of what I saw with the headlights glaring, I knew deep down that I wasn't mistaken. I trust my instincts. As the weeks went by, my neighbor, the one who shares the driveway with me, told me he proceeded to set up surveillance cameras in his window facing my front door and another facing the street from his next door neighbor's place. This wasn't difficult for him since he often helps the elderly man with various tasks. He said he felt for me because his ex-wife had cheated on him, and he knows how it feels. Several weeks passed before he finally reached his breaking point and decided to show me the evidence that he collected. We were sitting in his carport, smoking and talking when he pulled out the proof. I don't like getting involved in other people's personal matters, but since we're friends and spend a lot of time together here, and you've asked me for help, I can't ignore this any longer. As it turns out, on almost every weekend, since I have my kids every other weekend, my boss, Joe Schmo, has been coming over to my house while I'm still at work. He leaves before I finish my shift, since he's the one who writes my schedule, and comes back later if I leave again. They spend hours together behind closed doors, walking my dog and doing God knows what. I'm beyond livid now. He sends me copies of the videos. Well, by now I've lined up an apartment that's actually closer to my ex-fiancé and my kids, but I haven't told Lori that. I've also actually spoken to my ex's husband, and he works for this high-end security company, and he's offered me a position there too that works well for seeing my babies. He's actually a really good guy, and I'm super happy for my ex and her husband. They've been really supportive of me despite everything. So by now I feel good about where I'm at, more or less, even though Lori is cheating on me. So I take a sick day and pack up my things and start moving them into my new apartment. I have one of my buddies help me. I then take some time to write up an email to my director, basically Joe Schmo's boss, and telling him about Schmo and Lori's relationship and making up hours on his timesheet. I immediately get a response back thanking me for this information. Lori comes home from her shift and she obviously has no idea the bomb I've just planted at work, but she sees my stuff is gone and she asks me what's up. I tell her I'm leaving her. She's stunned, looking around the empty apartment in disbelief. I see the confusion and shock in her eyes, quickly morphing into anger. She demands to know why I'm leaving, what she did wrong, but I keep my composure. With a steady voice, I tell her that I know about her affair with Joe Schmo. Her face goes pale, her eyes widening in realization that she's been caught. She tries to deny it at first, but when I mention specific details that only someone who had seen the surveillance footage would know, knowing she's caught, she changes her story. She says she effed up, but did not do anything as bad as I did. I respond and say, what did I do? I didn't get physical with anyone. I never cheated on her. She attempted to say I cheated on her with my ex-fiancé. I say don't even start that. I say we weren't even dating. I say she knowingly kept seeing Joe Schmo even after we started dating and didn't even know if it was his baby or mine when she had the abortion. I told her I'm out of there and completely done with all of her and her BS. Picked up the rest of my bags, my dog was with my buddy, and walked out the door. The next day I went into work and gave them my resignation. Thankfully, I was on good terms with the director and he didn't require me to stay the 2 weeks given the circumstances. Update. Well, I just received an email from my director. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We've conducted an investigation and your claims have been substantiated. Joe Schmo has been terminated effective immediately. I try to maintain my composure, but inside I'm celebrating this small victory. Justice has been served. Then it continues. As for Lori, she has been terminated effective immediately. We believe it's best for all parties to move on from this situation. I've been working at this new place for a little while now, and all is well. And I've been spending a lot of time with my children, and my ex and I have become actually really good friends. I feel good. I feel happy. Whoa, OP. This is quite the saga. It takes a certain level of self-awareness to own up to your mistakes amidst all the chaos. I mean, who hasn't struggled with their demons or made questionable decisions in the pursuit of happiness? And then there's Lori, the hostess turned heartbreaker, the friend turned foe. She was there through thick and thin, but apparently that thin line between friendship and infidelity was too tempting to resist. Oh dear Lori, the femme fatale. It's like she's straight out of a film noir, luring and unsuspecting victims with her charm and then pulling the rug out from under them. But hey, at least she got her comeuppance in the end, right? Karma's got a funny way of catching up with you, especially when you're playing fast and loose with other people's hearts. But I mean, you did give her one too many second chances. And Joe Schmo? Oh, what a character. Slithering his way into both our hearts and our workplace like a snake in the grass. Alas, even the smoothest operators can't escape the long arm of justice, as evidenced by his swift termination. Never was a story of more woe than OP, Lori, and Joe Schmo. What do you make of this? What would you have done differently in OP's shoes? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. And thank you for joining us today on rSpace. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. See you next time.